Good evening and welcome to New Foundation Unity. This is our third in the series of 6 classes on the book of Revelation. And before we have our opening prayer, I would like to make 2 announcements. The first being that there will be no class next Thursday. I'm taking a short break, a short vacation, and classes will continue on the following 3 Thursdays. So please continue to read your book of Revelation and study the lessons. Second announcement is, and while this is a couple of months away, I wanted to give you ample opportunity to consider this. I am taking people on a meditation retreat at a beautiful facility about 45 minutes from here in Kansas City. There are only 8 rooms. 3 of them have already been filled, so I encourage you, if you would like to come, to let me know and I will send you the details. Also, if you would like to have the training in practice of the silence, that is the week prior to this retreat. Email me if you're interested and I will fill you in. April 24th and 25th through noon of the 26th, that's the retreat dates. The class is Monday the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and the 24th before we go on the retreat. The purpose of the retreat is to deepen your experience and understanding of your practice in the silence. And tonight we will discuss the importance of the silence in the context of Revelation. So as we begin our time together, I invite you to close your eyes and settle in to that silent place at the center of your being. And remind ourselves of the truth that there is but one power, one presence, one life, one mind, one source, and we are one with that one. We have within us everything that we need for a happy, fulfilling, and productive life. We have everything within us to overcome any condition, any circumstance, any problem. Let us become aware of the infinite potential that lies within us. For a few moments in the silence, let us rest in that awareness of what it means to be made in the image and after the likeness of God in the silence. And as we begin to return our attention to this time and this place, we heed the call that is voiced in Revelation to come up higher in consciousness, so that we may enjoy the rewards of heaven right here on earth. And for that awareness of the truth that sets us free, we are so grateful, and we do give thanks in the name and through the power of our master teacher, our way shower, Jesus Christ. Amen. I'd like to once again call your attention to the structure of Revelation. First of all, we are going progressively deeper into consciousness. As Adine mentioned tonight, the imagery is getting more vivid. Do not let it scare you. There is simply no other way to describe what happens when spiritual awareness is infused into an impure system. Everything is getting reorganized. You cannot take this literally. Otherwise, you will scare yourself out of ever reading it again. The structure, first, and this is from last week, we got a vision of what it looks like when everything is in alignment with the one power and one presence. That is the vision of what happens after we have made the corrections after writing the letters to the churches. 1, seated on a throne, God. 24 elders, seated on 24 thrones, are 12 powers, functioning in maturity, inside and outside. Sea of glass, infinite possibilities expanding before us, and all 4 aspects of our being, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all functioning in alignment with the one power and one presence. And there is this celebration. Holy, holy, holy is what the elders are chanting. Now, following the visions, and we have 6 visions that we're going to look at. Following each vision, there is some instruction. And last week, we saw some things as we looked inward of what kind of inner work we needed to do. The 7-sealed book was opened by the Lamb. And starting out with the 4 horsemen, the four horses that came forth, we got to see that we have this part in consciousness that we call our spiritual essence that cannot be harmed. No harm can become to it. It is mightier than anything that, any condition that can come to us. Then next, we had that red horse. These are the human beliefs, the red horse, the black horse, the pale horse. These are human beliefs that we hold that absolutely need to be cleansed from consciousness. 1, the belief in the need for conflict. War. That red horse had the power to take peace from the earth. The black horse, which is a belief in lack, famine. that somehow that gives rise to a reluctance to give, which gives rise to greed and this belief in materialism. And then the pale horse, the belief in the inevitability or the finality of death. Death is merely a change in form. So to be afraid of death is to be afraid of change. And as a species, we are pretty resistant to change. Okay, so then we come, that's in the mind. That's the mental work that has to be done. We've become aware of beliefs that we hold that give us trouble in our outer life. And you can read all of that if you want to go back and review. The fifth seal was opened. That's the souls that were hiding under the altar. This is the subconscious. And the subconscious, all those feelings that have been buried and are hiding. Okay, that is rather risky too in terms of what it gives rise to, namely these negative feelings of revenge and getting even, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay, and the instruction to them is just rest for a while. Just rest for a while, and you will see, you'll have an opportunity to join with all other souls who will have an opportunity to receive the seal of God on their forehead. But before that happens, then there is the sixth seal that is opened, and it's an earthquake. This is what shakes you up out of complacency. Many times we feel that, hey, we've joined a church, we've taken some classes, we're in good shape spiritually, and I don't really need to do a whole lot more. And so there's an earthquake, and it takes something like an earthquake to say, let me look within and see what I need to do, either in my beliefs or feelings, what is causing this. Okay. Then there is an interlude with the promise that there will be no more disasters until there is an opportunity to have your forehead sealed with the protection of God. If you believe that vision at the beginning is something that you wish to have become a reality in your life, then you say, I'm going to commit myself to my spiritual growth, and yes, I want the seal of protection on my forehead, because then I know I can move through any challenge and not be overcome by it. Okay. And so we have the 144,000, which is 12 times 12 multiplied by 1,000. You are truly protected. Okay. Then what happens is the seventh seal, and there was silence, and here's where we're going to pick up today. Silence in heaven for 1/2 hour. Okay, so our inner peace is, we're experiencing inner peace right now. And even though it's temporary, we have more challenges to go through, still it's reassuring to know that there is this place in consciousness where we can go and be totally safe from anything going on in the outside world. Okay. The interlude is to allow us to kind of assimilate the lessons that we've been gained from the opening of these seals. And one thing I think we can say for sure is look to God. Look unto me, as Emma Curtis Hopkins says. It shows us the need to be in control of our emotions, to have our beliefs in alignment with spirit. It shows us the dangers of stuffing emotions, memories of victimization or perceived injustice or injuries of any kind. And perhaps we could also say that it could show us that in every seeming disaster is a blessing. But most important of all is the seventh seal, which is to take time to be holy. Take time in the silence every day, because it's only in the silence where we feel our connection to the source. We need that reassurance every day that there is that source within us. And we will not really believe it until it begins to be more dominant in our awareness than the appearance of things on the outside. Even as the third vision, which is now beginning, this is our new lesson for tonight, we are carrying over some of that piece as the new vision begins. And the new vision begins, we're still in chapter 8, and what happens is that here are 7 angels who stand before God, and trumpets were given to them. We do not usually associate angels with disasters. Angels are spiritual thoughts of God. And messages, yes, message. And trumpets always are like affirmation. They are like loud and clear and saying something of immense significance. So here are these angels standing around God with their trumpets, ready to blow their trumpets, when another angel comes down. And I want to read this part to you. Another angel comes down, and this is found starting with verse 3 in chapter 8. Another angel came and stood at the altar with a golden censer, and he was given much incense to mingle with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke of the incense rose with the prayers of the saints from the hand of the angel before God. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it on the earth. And there were peals of thunder, voices, flashes of lightning, and an earthquake. Okay, throwing the censer filled with fire onto the earth. Okay, do you understand what that symbolizes? Okay, it's not enough to go into the silence. We have to bring that, what is in the source, out onto the earth. Charles Fillmore said that the fire of God, that's the Holy Spirit. it's not enough to just know truth. We have to experience truth and then practice it. So the angel is throwing that fire out onto the earth, and here we go. This is the same structure as the 7 seals. So the first thing, the first trumpet, blew the trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, which fell on the earth. All right, so earth, that has to do with our physical life. So our physical life is going to feel the impact of that putting truth into practice. Okay. Oh, good news, but only a third was burnt up, and a third of the trees burnt up, and the third of the green grass. All right, so only one part of us is affected, never our whole being. No matter what the pain, no matter what the condition, it only affects a portion of us, never the whole person. All right, so that has to do with our physical life. I think we've all had earthquakes in our physical life. Shakeups, right? Second trumpet, now the sea becomes blood. This is like the red horse, all right? These are the consequences of what happens if we don't make the changes that we need to make. So what happens? The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain burning with fire. This is an explosion of a volcano. And that was thrown into the sea. And so it's like our wild, uncontrolled emotions are thrown into the sea of consciousness. And a third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Only a third. Okay. Third trumpet. This has to do with the mental realm. The star, the falling star. The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star fell from heaven, blazing like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the fountains of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many more died of the water because it was made bitter. Okay, so our mental environment is poisoned with these error beliefs that we still hold. Fourth trumpet, and this has to do with our spiritual level, the darkening of the sun, moon, and stars. The fourth angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light was darkened. All right, on our spiritual life, if we are feeling disconnected from the source, we cannot receive the guidance that we need. Okay. But again, a third, it's only a third, and a third of the day and a third of the night. So, not the whole person. Okay. Then I heard an eagle crying with a loud voice. The eagle, remember the eagle in the previous, in the part about the seals, the opening the seals, the eagle represented that which was aspiring to soar above in the heavens. And this eagle is saying, woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth. Okay, this is human consciousness. Woe to you who dwell in human consciousness, as the blasts of the other trumpets, which the three angels are about to blow. Okay, so these are consequences of what happens in each area of our being if we don't correct our beliefs, if we don't cleanse consciousness of these emotions, memories of past wrongs. And what happens if we lose our guidance, if we don't look to divine guidance, but still continue on in our human error beliefs. And finally, what happens when we feel disconnected from the source? Our spiritual life becomes very dim and dark. Okay, now the fifth trumpet. The fifth trumpet, which is the opening of the bottomless pit. Okay, bottomless pit. It's bottomless, so it has no foundation in truth. It's a hole, so there's no substance to it. All right? This is the subconscious, the bottomless pit. Okay, so the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from heaven to earth, and he was given the key of the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke, like the smoke of a great furnace. Okay, heat, all right. This is different from the smoke of the censer, which is the smoke of incense. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts. You know what locusts are? Yes? Locusts?
Literal locusts.
Yeah, what are locusts? Plague, yeah? Okay. Huge, big plague. It was one of the plagues in Egypt. You know, when Moses was trying to get Pharaoh to let his people go, a plague of locusts that look sort of like grasshoppers. I looked up their picture. It looks sort of like grasshoppers, and they swarm and they eat absolutely everything in their path. Branches, leaves, absolutely everything. That's what eats away. The subconscious, if it's not brought into alignment, will eat away your life force. And they were given power, like the power of scorpions. Okay, scorpions are poisonous. They have a tail that if you get stung by a scorpion, you're stung with some poison. The power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green growth, or any tree, but only those of mankind who have not the seal of God upon their foreheads. Now, if you don't have the seal of God upon your forehead, that means you have chosen not to continue on this path. So there are those who hung out, all right, and decided that maybe they could do it on their own. Maybe they could get along just fine with the human beliefs that they had. All right. All right. Now, these are ferocious. The description of these is quite ferocious because they were allowed to torture. This is strong language. They were allowed to torture like the torture of a scorpion when it stings a man. So pain so strong that they will long to die and will try to escape from it. But they can't. It lasts for 5 months. All right. In other words, it's only on the level of the senses, all right, that this is felt. Know that pain and suffering comes as a resistance to change. We'll go into examples in just a moment. So, they have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon. Abaddon, which means destruction. All right. It means destruction. So, what do we have to learn from trumpets? For the first 5 trumpets, we have to learn, first of all, that suffering is temporary, and that out of this misfortune, if we have the connection to the source which will allow us to endure, we will enjoy great blessings as a result. So persist. Those, I think, are the 2 messages that we can get from this. So, out of the smoke, see, the locusts who are like scorpions come out of the smoke. There's nothing there. It's an unreality. Of course, if you're living through it, it feels very real to you. So this is the end of the first woe. All right, there's 3 woes, and this is number 1. The angel of the bottomless pit. And what the angel in the bottomless pit is attacking is the belief in idols. Idolatry. What's idolatry? That's not rhetorical. What are idols? What are beliefs?
Man-made representations.
Well, that's a literal meaning of idols. But do we worship
beliefs that aren't
okay,
God?
What do we believe that is not God? Sometimes we try to believe both, that we believe in health and sickness. I was thinking of this today when people have given so much power to the flu that it has been elevated to a season. You know, we not only have summer and winter and spring and fall, but we have a season called flu. We give power to disease instead of to health. We give power to an appearance of lack rather than to abundance, because we're looking out here instead of in here. That has to become the reality. So the eagle comes crying again. He says, you've got even more in store for you if you hang on to your human consciousness. All right? So after this, we need to remember that any beliefs other than belief in God, seeking first the kingdom of God, anything that we believe in other than God is considered idol worship. What needs to be destroyed is there is a belief that life can be destroyed. Life can never be destroyed. Only forms of life can be destroyed. That's an important distinction. Okay. As long as we believe in materiality, as long as we give power to destruction, the outer destruction of forms will take place. We have to release the possibility of life as destructible or limited. That has to go. We have to, if we're on this path, we have to grow beyond the need just to have an easy, comfortable, safe life. That is what people who live an ordinary human life, who perhaps do not aspire beyond those things, not realizing that if you seek first that inner kingdom, that everything else that you need will be added. The sixth trumpet is pretty intense. Okay. Because they have the power, the sixth trumpet, which is our strongest spiritual angel, it has the power to gather up the other four angels who were bound at the river Euphrates. Now, the Euphrates in ancient times was like part of the Fertile Crescent. It was also one of the four rivers that came from Eden. And it represents our circulatory system because, like our blood, all nourishment comes from there. And so to kill, this is the next woe, okay, that this angel was given power to release these four angels that were bound at the river Euphrates, and so this is greatly intensifying. They had the power to kill 1/3 of humankind. And here, and what they're being killed by is fire and smoke and sulfur coming from their mouths. Horses in metaphysical language represent power in the relative world, in the physical world, power, dominion. So we're gearing up the purification quite a few notches here. And as the spiritual self rises up, it has to draw on deeper resources, 100 by twice of 100 times 100,000. Twice 100 times 100, twice times the cavalry, the spiritual cavalry is twice 10,000 times 10,000. Anyway, that's a lot. You have to double the spiritual force that you bring to this. And some of the idolatry, some of those beliefs disappear, but some escape. And the ones that escape the plague are reluctant to relinquish, that is, they do not repent, they are reluctant to give up these beliefs, even though they cause suffering. Do you know people who refuse to give up beliefs, even though They know it's not for their highest
You know
good.
what occurs to me is that when it's 2 times 10,000 times 10,000, that kind of brings dichotomy into it, and the whole, and which kind of links to belief in one, belief in more than one.
Well, it also means inner and outer.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, never mind.
It depends on the context, but you're right. In some cases, it does mean duality. Okay. Now, after the sixth trumpet, and some of the people do not change their ways, there's another interlude, just as there was before the seventh seal. So before the seventh trumpet is blown, we have an interlude. And I think this is one of the key parts of the book. And so I'll just read you a little bit here.
This is an interlude within an interlude, though.
No, this is the interlude before the seventh trumpet, just as we had an interlude before the seventh seal. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, this is a very heavenly angel. It says, this angel coming down from heaven, wrapped in a cloud, with a rainbow over his head, and his face was like the sun, and his legs like pillars of fire. Do you remember how the Israelites were guided through the wilderness, a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night? All right. He had a little scroll open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the sand. Okay? Right foot on the sea, left foot on the sand. So joining conscious and subconscious, joining thinking and feeling, and called out with a loud voice like a lion roaring. When he called out, the 7 thunders sounded. Okay, 7 thunders. Okay. So what are those 7 thunders? Okay. That's something to think about. Okay, it causes a delay in the blowing of the 7th trumpet. Okay. And here's what happens. John is told to go, not write anything more down, but go and take the scroll and eat it. All right, here again, truth is not truth until it is practiced. So eating something means to ingest, to appropriate, to take it in and assimilate. And he is told that it will be sweet to the taste and bitter in the belly. When you first come in to unity, let's say, you come in and you hear what truth can do for you. It's like sweet honey. Is there anything sweeter than hearing that you have infinite potential, that you are on an equal spiritual par with Jesus, that you can do all these things, and you're given truth principles? It's really sweet to talk about truth. But putting it into practice is difficult. And it can feel bitter in the belly. But very important, because one of our principles in unity is that we walk our talk. All right. it's not enough just to know the truth principles. We have to actually put them into practice and know that changes come about in all areas of our being. Let's see what we have here. So, after he has taken the book and eaten it, the angel says, no more delays. And by the way, at least this is my take on the seven thunders here, is that angel is announcing another series of trials. Okay? Trial, vision, and so on. So no more delay. The mystery of God should be revealed. And he experienced exactly what the angel said, that it tasted sweet, but as he digested it and assimilated it, it tasted bitter. I mean, isn't it different, let's say, to talk about forgiveness, to talk about love, than it is to forgive? Yes? Is it easier to talk about abundance or to actually practice abundance, let's say if your bank account is low? Do we drop back into human consciousness? Is it easier to say, I am whole and well, or to continue saying that as you experience some illness? We have to keep reminding ourselves of the vision that was presented at the beginning of this trumpet series of trumpets. Okay. Now, after he has eaten the scroll, this is an interesting part. He is asked to measure. He was given a measuring rod like a staff and was told, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship there. Okay, measure in this case means to evaluate. All right. To evaluate the temple of God, but not to evaluate what is outside in the courtyard. Think about how do you value your spiritual life? Do you want to be around people who are out there? No, never mind. If you get involved in evaluating what's out there, your truth principles are going to be trampled upon. Have you ever tried to talk truth to someone who is absolutely not interested? Someone who is not ready to experience that. Okay. So we have these two witnesses here, and he's told that he's going to have to do some prophesying. He's got some more work to do. And so here we have these two witnesses. Okay, and they have the power to prophesy for 1,260 days, which, and that's the same amount of time if you're thinking of it. So this is the negative effect, and so it's neutralized by the prophesying over the nations. Okay. It's interesting. You can figure it out mathematically. But 42 months, 12 times 4, 400. Anyway, it works. Then there are 2 olive trees and 2 lampstands which stand before the Lord of the earth. Okay, olive trees. Olive trees, what do olive trees stand for?
Well, there's the peace aspect.
Yes, right. Okay, that's
I was going to say oil
peace.
being wine.
Okay, inner peace and outer peace. So, olive trees. And when you have peace, you feel joy. Okay, and then 2 lampstands. What about 2 lampstands?
Well, they hold light.
They hold light. So you have light, the light of guidance within, and you have the light to follow that guidance into expression. These are the rewards. Even though these 2 witnesses are killed, they are killed, but they don't stay dead. They're resurrected and they ascended to destroy that belief in the finality of death. Okay. It's a very interesting passage. Okay. It's the beast. As the beast arises out of the bottomless pit, think of the beast as the adversary. Okay. And so these 2 witnesses are killed by the beast. And there are those who rejoice because they were tormented. But after 3.5 days, they rose and they were ascended. And again, another earthquake. 7,000 were killed, and the rest terrified. Okay. So there we've had the 3 woes. And so it goes. And so it goes. Let's see. I think I'm going to open it up to calls, questions, comments. 816-301-6304. If you have any difficulties understanding or interpreting anything from last week or this week, please feel free to call.
Could you just go over, I got involved in the story and forgot what the second woe was.
Okay.
The first woe is the opening of
The first,
smoke.
Yeah, sulfur, yes, yeah, right. And the second is the beast opening up the bottomless pit. And the third is killing the 2 witnesses, that part.
Oh.
Okay, that's the end of the 3 woes. And then the 7th trumpet, which is the consummation. The 7th angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in saying, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders who sit on their thrones before God fell on their faces and worshiped God, saying, we give thanks. Okay. So that's the fulfillment when we individually bring heaven out onto earth. It takes work. It takes a willingness to release. And sometimes we're resistant, and so it takes longer. But we have total control over how fast and how comfortable we want to make the process. And I can tell you it's almost completely comfortable with a practice of silence. Not that you won't have any more challenges, but you will know where to go for support in moving through those challenges. So the seventh trumpet, it's like once again we've gone through another cycle of trials, and now we're ready for another vision. But we will begin that not tonight, but in 2 weeks from tonight. So, go ahead. What were you trying to say? The woes?
No. I just was. I get I get that now.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we are down to God's temple in heaven was opened, and the Ark of His
Yes.
Covenant was seen within.
Right. Okay. God's
lights.
temple in heaven. This means we have actually opened up, we've made a connection to the source and have seen what is within the temple. Okay. And there were flashes of lightning, voices, peals of thunder, and earthquake and heavy hail. What is not easy for people to understand is that the silence is not silent. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Eleanor. I just have a question. I'm glad Zane asked that because my thing, I wanted to review the 3 woes.
Okay.
And the sulfur and the smoke. And I remember the smoke when God appeared in the Old Testament, it was usually in a cloud. You said cloud during the day and
Pillar of fire.
And the moon at night. Meaning cloud is protection, right?
Protection.
So
Yes.
So there's an appearance of God coming in the cloud. It's protection, right?
Yes. Right. That's right.
And I also, can you tell me what wormwood is?
Wormwood.
What is that?
It's a kind of it's a tree, and the bark is very bitter. And also in the Exodus, where the Israelites come upon a pond of bitter water, and it's wormwood. It has been poisoned by. It's not poison. It's just very, very bitter to the taste. And in this book, when it says wormwood, it means that our guidance is really gone. It's been skewed because we're not hearing true guidance. And so that's the star. The star represents the divine guidance, but it's fallen into this bitter water, and definitely turbulent emotions can skew our guidance.
Okay. I also thought it was interesting when he was told to ingest the skull. You said it was bitter and sweet to taste. What came to my mind is the Last Supper, and Jesus said, "Take and eat. This is my body. Take and drink. This is my blood." And ingesting, and a combination of sweetness and bitterness because of what he had to endure.
Yes, take this cup from me. If it be possible to take this cup from me. Absolutely. But it's so true. It's my experience in classes that there's this kind of romantic illusion that once you enter a path of truth, that your life is challenge-free, that all you have to do is come to classes and just enjoy, and that somehow you are immune to the bumps of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And that's not the truth. It's that as you go deeper in consciousness, you find more places where there is not an alignment with the one power and one presence. And so it's a matter of degree and intensity according to the willingness of one to enter into it fully.
And it's interesting because I've talked to some other ministers of different faiths, and they're critical of unity because they don't recognize the shadow. It's all happy balloons and parties, and everything's wonderful, and there is no so forth. But it's the shadow, and I think through this whole study of Revelation is saying that, and you make the point tonight, as you have in previous nights, that as we're moving through our spiritual growth, we're going to open up areas in our subconscious mind that have not been touched before and are being brought up for healing and removal. And so we could say, and I think what Revelation does show, it shows the importance of turning to God, but it also shows the shadow part of that process of all these tribulations and so forth that come up. The key is that when we face and experience these tribulations and challenges, that we have the faith to know that it put it in proper perspective, and as you said, and return back, come back, change your thinking, like the prodigal son, and come back to the truth, which is the silence, which is the power and the presence that resides in us and in all creation. But in our process of movement, we do experience challenges and tribulations. I remember a Unity minister years ago talked about how he just came out of meditation and it was so peaceful and so wonderful, and he gets in his car and gets on the highway and turns into this demon when someone cuts him off and is beeping at him and so forth.
Yes.
And so I think that's important. And what I got tonight is that there's a whole this spiritual growth of this process that we're going through. We obviously will have difficulties, challenges, and tribulations. It's what we do in those challenges that I guess separates the man from the boys and the woman from the girl. So
absolutely. And we can't go on to the next series of challenges until we have successfully mastered these.
Right.
So it is a progression of going from the outer, where we're simply writing letters to these churches. Now we're actually experiencing the consequences of the error beliefs that we hold, of believing in conflict, and of believing in famine, and in believing in death. So we have to have these experiences to change those beliefs. It's not just a matter of intellectually saying, I think that belief doesn't serve me anymore, I think I'll just let it go. But it's more having the strength within that will dissolve the belief on its own.
Yeah.
As otherwise, people try and try and try, and the more they try, the more resistance there is. Those are stubborn, those beliefs, and especially the ones in the subconscious that we're not even aware of. Right.
It's that's all I have.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. I think somebody else is calling, actually. So thanks, Bob.
Okay, good.
That was Jim. Jim was calling. You can call now, Jim.
That does, when he was talking about the la-di-da aspect of unity.
Hi. Good evening.
Hi.
Hello, I'm calling from Iowa.
Jim, turn down the volume on your computer. Thank you.
Yeah, I muted it. I heard Adine asking a question, and she wanted to follow up on Bob's question first, obviously.
Follow up on.
That la-di-da thing?
If Adine wanted to, she had a follow-up question to
Okay.
Bob. I'll listen while she...
Okay.
No,
Okay.
yeah, when Bob was talking about being with other ministers who thought that unity was all sweetness and light, I think there's that aspect of some unity congregations and churches that really are a little bit superficial, or can be. But there is that further depth that say in death. I know there have been some people who said, "Oh, unity! My God, you guys just, you just think death is nothing," and we do. I mean, we understand dying to things, but I'm just thinking that some of this stuff, some of the turbulence on the top of life, not that those painful things don't exist, but we can tend to go deeper, and we sort of ignore, in some ways, some of that top stuff.
Turn down the volume. It's horrible. Turn down the volume on your computer. Okay. Yes. And I have to tell you a comment that one of my teachers made in ministerial school. And he said, "You unity people do not know what you have. That it has a depth that will stand you through anything." He said, "You have a racehorse and you treat it like a draft horse." Okay. It is the royal road to spiritual consciousness, but it requires a commitment to honor that part of yourself, and eventually a time comes when you contact the source and you come out, and you contact the source and you come out, and the day does come when that inner voice has more power than you have been giving to all the outer pulls that say, "Pay attention to me, pay attention to me," like that. And he was not a unity person who said that. He was our chaplain, Rick Burns, who was, I think, the best teacher I had, because he realized the depth and the substance of unity that many do not. Because it has that potential. And unity was not designed. The teachings of Jesus were not designed for people to go away and escape from the world. They were designed for people who live in the world. He said, "In the world you have tribulation, but lo, I have overcome the world." So we have, through that Christ power within us, the capacity to overcome things instead of react to them and store them up as little hurts and injuries and stuff them in our subconscious. As long as the ego the human ego, the selfish ego, is still in charge, there's always going to be these little incidents that come up, but eventually we can see them for what they are before we engage in some reactive something that doesn't serve anyone. Yeah. So did you have any other comments, Jim? Questions?
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question. I didn't ask my question yet. And then I'm going to hang up because I can't hear very well
Okay.
with the phone. So here's my question. All of the visions and all of the things that the angel represents and all that relate to spiritual development, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what I find a bit overwhelming in reading Revelation, besides the extremity of it all, the flashiness, the tumultuous kind of things they're describing, what I find a bit overwhelming is the number, the different kinds of visions and all the different symbols. It would seem that you wouldn't need so many to communicate what are relatively simple spiritual ideas. So I think I'm going to just hang up and listen on the computer because it's a little easier to hear.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about when we first started. It's just so dense. It gets very dense.
Well,
but I think
it does.
It gets at you from all the directions that this can get at you from. So.
But if you go all the way back to the beginning and you see the letters to the churches, you see that first you make a contact with an angel. The angel has some kind of message for you, okay, from that particular church. Okay. And then the angel praises you for the strength of that particular area of consciousness. Then you are shown the weaknesses of that. And then you are shown the consequences of what happens if you don't follow that guidance. And then you are shown the rewards, the compensation, as it were, for those rewards. And so every section, it's very symmetrical, and the images get more intense, like these are the consequences of this particular section. This is what happens when you don't follow the guidance. Your peace is taken away. Your guidance is askew. Your fear of death, belief structures experience. So you hold on to these beliefs that keep on structuring the same old experience. And the subconscious, we have to have the courage. It's the same four beasts that were in the beginning, the same four things, the lion, the ox, the face of a man, and the eagle. Same ones throughout. The eagle is the one that says, is looking from the high perspective and says, you got some more work to do. These woes are coming. You haven't changed this. So then you see the consequences. Do you want that kind of life, or do you want this other kind of life? And in chapter 12, which is where we'll pick up in 2 weeks, we see the new birth. There's still some things to go through.
Well, but addressing directly what Jim was talking about, it is the same things. I mean, he was saying, there's just so much going on, or something where it's that effect. And you are going over the same territory.
Sure.
But you're looking at it, the consequences in different ways and from different perspectives.
Sure.
So that's why I think of it as a big circle, and then you kind of get denser and denser and denser
as you get towards the center. Because we start out from the outside. Where else can we start? And we have a vision, like John. Why am I in this predicament? And then there's the vision. A vision. It says, write this down. You're being given some instructions. Think of Revelation as a spiritual survival manual. This is how you overcome the tribulations that come with a human consciousness. We try to live in two states of consciousness. We do live in two states of consciousness, but eventually it has to be one. Okay. And so we all have some work to do, but the more you go into the silence and come out, the more power comes from that place, and you begin to trust that guidance enough to act on it. But so we start superficially. We start, how come? Why is this happening to me? I've done everything right, and here I'm in prison, in the middle of the Aegean, on this island, which I forget what it means now, but I looked it up at one point. And then, he said, oh, okay. So, and I think we can all accept that we have beliefs that are not in accord with spiritual truth, beliefs that we consciously believe and some we don't. And so then, again, more instruction. Okay, let's open them up and let's see what's there. Oh, that's not so pleasant. To really look and acknowledge what it is that you have been believing and what emotions and what motives you've had. All of that is not very pleasant to look at. But then, the silence. Okay? And the silence says, here's a place of peace. Here is the source of what will allow you to move through these kinds of situations. And you say, okay. And then you put that truth into practice, and it can be very intense. So while it was sweet to the taste, it's bitter to actually put truth into practice. That's why we see the all is bliss and light kind of, I don't want to be negative. I'm not even going to acknowledge that there's any such thing as denial.
Until you go out and somebody cuts you off in traffic.
Exactly. And then you see what you really believe. There was... Hi, Bob.
Eleanor, good discussion. Jim makes a good point, though. This is a very, looking at it from the surface level, very difficult. There's a lot here. But I was thinking there's a similarity here between the whole theme of the Old Testament in all the movement when the Israelites pull away from center, they get all discombobulated, and it isn't until they're always called back. They're called back by situations, circumstances, by the prophets, and so forth. And the other point is as we do when we study Scripture, is look at this John. We have to look at the John in me, and we're looking at the John in Revelation as me, and I'm in prison. I find myself in prison, and I'm dealing with all these situations. So, is it being imprisoned in my situation or circumstance, or is it being imprisoned of not having the insight or the wisdom or the inspiration to see?
The imprisonment.
I don't know if you understand my question.
I do understand your question. Yes, John within us, which represents the faculty of love, that faculty of knowing the connection to the source, finds himself in prison. That is the prison of the intellect, which is looking at outer appearances and making an evaluation from there. That's what I would say. And so, yeah, we're imprisoned in a circumstance, but it's more we're imprisoned in a belief that somehow that this, he can't see at that moment beyond that. Here he was like, we'll say he was a disciple because we're all disciples. And our mission is to carry on that message of truth, to spread the gospel. And so here he has been put in prison by the Roman officials, and he's not happy about it. He's kind of languishing in prison and asking himself what went wrong. And so in response to that, he instantly gets guidance. Well, let's see.
So,
Go on.
I think it's interesting, as you're talking, what comes to me, you know my daughter works in prisons, and inmates in prison go two ways. They either become very, very bitter and angry and hostile, or they come to the realization that I have done this, and they make a change or the transformation in consciousness. And I'm talking to her working with inmates on death row. She has noticed and recognized that there are some that have, and there are some that haven't. So the whole notion, metaphysically, the notion of being imprisoned, we could be imprisoned with our circumstance, situation, whether that be in a relationship where we feel like we're in prison, whether it be an illness, whatever the situation is, it imprisons us. And if we just stay and look at it from the intellect, we can blame, we can continue to be angry, or we can go into that temple and for help, and which moves us to a higher place. And this one particular inmate that she's worked with, that I feel like I almost know, that he has done that. He recognizes he committed a horrendous crime. He can't change that, but he's turned to the source within in his own field of spirituality, and he has found a peace, recognizing that probably, and good possibility, he can be put to death any day. But knowing that that death is not the enemy any longer. So the situation and circumstance, and you've said this, and we see the same through the Old Testament. When we go through difficult times, it's an opportunity for us to go into a deeper awareness of our divine self, of our higher self, of the Christ within.
Yes, absolutely. And like you said, like your daughter says, that there are some, look at Nelson Mandela. Some go into prison, a physical prison, and they come out enlightened. Because what is there to do except to go within? To try and get out, that's pretty futile. But you get all kinds of insights because you have plenty of time to look within. Muhammad Ali was another one who, took advantage of prison. And many people do have some kind of religious conversion, and that it doesn't really matter how horrendous the crime is, that if you find peace within yourself and you make contact with that place inside, then that takes away a lot of the fear of being executed. I as I've told you and a few people, I had a death row prisoner that I felt like I knew. I thought he was a good friend. I felt like he was a very good friend who started out like a high school dropout, but ended up educating himself and really being able to use his knowledge to help other inmates, and manage to get correction in his situation, changes made in the horrendous environment in which he was in, and managed on his own to get support from 60 Minutes and pro bono lawyers, and brought suit against the prison and got it shut down, and distributed the $100,000 to all the prisoners' families who had already been executed, and to the people who had helped him. So it's an amazing experience to that at some level, I guess, one chooses. Not consciously, of course. No one would choose to be in prison, but if you are, there is a way to get the blessings out of it.
Right, and what comes to me is scripture. When did we see you homeless and in prison? As long as you saw one of these, you saw me. And
yes.
And I think I guess one of the things is the opening scenario in Revelation is we have a man who's been placed in prison, a man of faith who's been placed in prison.
Yes.
And so he I think this whole writing of Revelation is perhaps his process, or a process for us to use as an example.
Yes.
And it certainly is well written and written out in a story that defines the evolution of our spiritual growth.
Yes, it's a chart. It's an absolute chart. And then the amazing symmetry that Revelation is so matched with Genesis that you see that it's the beginning of the Bible brought to complete fulfillment. This is what it means if you follow the teachings. And then right in the middle of the Bible, you have the Psalm which says, drink from the river of life. What is that Psalm? Anyway, it's like, here's how you do your inner work. So you have the beginning where you have the image likeness, which then brought to complete fulfillment in Revelation by following the truth teachings. Yeah, it's and when you think the Bible was sort of put together by committees of men interested in political agendas and so on, and isn't it amazing that somehow infinite intelligence got in there and organized it in such a perfect way?
We are not in charge.
We are not in charge. That's right. We forget that.
Thank you, Eleanor. I know we're running over. I just wanted to call in and make that comment.
Yes.
I enjoyed the conversation, discussion this evening with Jim and Dean. It was good class.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night. Okay. So let's just close our eyes for a moment and drop back into that state of peace and know that with God in charge, all is truly well. And we say, thank you. So remember, no class next week. And if you're interested in the meditation weekend or the meditation class and weekend, please email me, Rev Eleanor, REVELEANOR @gmail.com. And I'll wish you all a very good night. And see you in 2 weeks.